Long physical working days, lack of freedom, crushing poverty, famine and disease. Oh, and heavy taxes. These were just a few things that embodied life in medieval England around the year 1000 to 1300. Today we're going back in time to see exactly what life might have been like for an average person living in this dangerous time. Now, if you were unlucky enough to live during this period, the likelihood would be that you are a serf, which made up around 75 to 90% of the population. A serf was a peasant tied to the land under the feudal system in medieval Europe. You would work the land for your lord in exchange for safety and the right to live on the manor estate. You were not a slave, but you had limited personal freedom and needed the lord's permission to marry, leave the manor, or change your job. Your primary tasks would include farming, tending livestock, maintaining the lord's estate, and performing various duties like repairing buildings. You also pay taxes and tithes in the form of goods, labor, or money. So, with all this being said, could you live as a serf in the medieval times? Let's find out. Well, this doesn't look too bad, does it? A new spring, the smell of fresh flowers and a gentle breeze. If only this manor was your home. No, in fact, you'll be maintaining this land. You are not allowed to leave it, and you will be bound by the specific instructions of your lord. This is your home. It's not much, but it's safe. The whole building is sourced from local materials and constructed around a wooden frame. The walls are made of wattle and daub. Wattle is a mixture of interwoven twigs covered with a blend of mud, hay and manure. Yes, your house is really made out of shit. Daub is the plaster mixture of chalk or lime and earth, giving the walls its cream colour. The roof is thatched using straw or reeds. Without further ado, let's go inside, shall we? So here is where you will rest and eat. It's basic but should cover all your needs. You've got your straw bed over there for sleeping, your hearth over there for cooking, a bucket for doing your business. Oh, and did you know you have a wife and 2 children? Oh, and here's your pig, Jerry. He might not smell very nice, but he'll keep your home a bit warmer in the winter. So here's the arrangement. You'll be working 3 to 4 days a week, hard physical labor for your lord, and you'll also be paying taxes. Now, you're probably wondering, what's in it for me? Well, there's no payday like you'd have in the future. Instead, your compensation comes in the form of rights, privileges, and obligations to your lord. First, you're granted the right to work this parcel of land, though it belongs to your lord. This piece of land, this little patch of earth, is what sustains your family. It's where you will grow your crops, raise your animals, and make your living. Your lord lets you use it, but remember, it's always his land. You also get something else vitally important: protection. Your lord is bound through the feudal system to protect you and your family. If trouble comes from another lord or outside forces, he should be there to defend you. At least, that's the deal. Then there are the common resources. While your land is his, certain things belong to the whole village: the woods, the streams and such. You have the right to gather deadwood from the lord's forests for fuel. You don't own the forest, but you can use it as long as you follow the rules. Oh, and hunting is strictly forbidden. Poaching may land you a nasty punishment. So you see, while you don't get gold coins, you do get land to work, protection, the use of common resources, and a measure of security. It's a tough life, but it's the way things work in this medieval world. Oh, do you hear that? Church bells, it's time for church mass. Now, this is a very important part of the day, and most of your fellow serfs won't start a day unless they've gone to church in the morning. The church is the beating heart of the village and stands as more than a place of worship. It's where we gather for mass, celebrate feasts, and hear the village news. The priest not only tends to our souls, but also binds us together in this shared faith. Now, let's get some breakfast. No fry-ups here, I'm afraid. You've got some dark bread made from rye or barley. This dense loaf will be the main component of the meal. Now, you're lucky to even have some bread for breakfast at all. A lot of your fellow serfs won't even get more than a quick bite to provide enough energy to start the day's labor. Now hurry up and get dressed for work. We've got lots to do. Speaking of clothing, it's probably not the wardrobe you're used to. You'll be wearing an itchy tunic made of wool, loose breeches, and a cloak for if it gets a bit chilly. And that's it. Oh, shoes? No, you can't afford them. You'll be tackling those muddy fields barefoot. Right then, are we all dressed for work? Let's find out what work we'll be doing today. Now, over the course of the year, you'll be working on the Lord's land, completing everyday tasks such as ploughing, digging, planting, harvesting, mowing, carting, manure spreading, caring for livestock and maintenance. Being springtime, we'll start with some ploughing, probably one of the most physical tasks out of all of them. During this time, you're preparing the land, breaking up the soil and turning it over to get to the rich, fertile earth beneath. This is the work that makes everything else possible. Without it, there's no food. The plough you're using has a sharp ploughshare, a coulter, and a mouldboard to turn over the soil. You walk behind the plough, guiding the oxen to pull it in a straight line through the field. And it's hard work, especially with the land as tough as it is. Ploughing isn't done just once, by the way. No, you have to go over the land 3 times. First, to turn over the old stubble. Second, to get rid of the weeds. And third, to prepare it for sowing. Then, once that's all done, you move on to planting. Spring's when the seeds go in. Barley, oats, peas, beans, whatever the land will give. You sow the grains by hand, just toss them over the field. But for peas and beans, you've got to use a stick to make little holes and plant each seed individually. After that, you take a harrow, this square wooden frame with spikes, and drag it over the field to cover up the seeds. And let me tell you, the birds are a menace. Your children usually get tasked with keeping them away from the newly sown seeds. Now, come late summer or early autumn, it's time for harvesting. You cut the crops with sickles or scythes, then tie them into sheaves and leave them to dry in the field. Once dry, you bring them into the barn or threshing floor, where you thresh the grain by hand using flails. And so it goes year after year. The fields rotate every few years to keep the soil rich. Then the cycle starts all over again. It's hard, unending work, but it's what keeps us going. Oh, would you look at that? It's time for lunch already. Now, lunch is your main meal of the day, lovingly prepared by your wife. She will gather whatever vegetables you've got, cabbage, onions, leeks and the like, and chop them up. Toss them into a big pot, fill it with water or stock if you're lucky, and set it over the fire. The pot boils and simmers on the hearth while she stirs it with a spoon. Add some herbs if you've got them, such as parsley, sage or thyme, and if you have barley or oats, she'll throw them in to thicken it. It cooks slowly, and as new ingredients come in, you can toss them in, making it a simple but adaptable meal to keep you going. Feel free to have a small portion of ale to accompany the meal for some extra calories. Enjoy your lunch as it's back to work until dusk. Whilst we're here, let's talk about health. Now, living in these poor conditions, you're constantly battling things like lice, fleas, and mites. To fight the parasites, you'll turn to herbs like wormwood, hoping it helps with those gut troubles. Diseases are another menace. With your poor diet and cramped living spaces, you're more prone to things like leprosy, malaria, and even hyperthyroidism. For fevers, coriander's what you'll use, and licorice or comfrey might help with breathing issues. You're also no stranger to injuries. When you get cut, you'll clean the wound with vinegar or mint. Most of your remedies come from herbs, faith, and a bit of superstition. If you're lucky, the wise women of the village might offer advice, or the priest will pray for you, or maybe even send you on a pilgrimage to a shrine. Now, you'd think with all this, you'd be sickly folk, right? But interestingly, some studies suggest you might have had fewer chronic diseases like diabetes and high blood pressure than folks today. Really makes you wonder. Having said that, life expectancy of a man during this time was only 24 years, while women would be expected to live to 33. So it was very important that in times of hardship or famine, to rely on the support of your community to survive. So you've completed a hard day's work. What can you do for fun around here? Well, you've got the tavern round the corner, a place where the ale flows and the troubles of the day are left at the door. Step inside and you'll find it's not just a place to drink, but a hub of simple pleasures and lively company. Ale is the lifeblood here. More common than wine and much cheaper too. It's not just a drink, it's sustenance, and you'll find some folk drinking a mighty 4 litres of it a day. The food's basic but filling. Bread, cheese, and if you're lucky, a bit of roasted meat. Some taverns keep a perpetual stew, a pot always simmering, with ingredients added as they come. But the tavern's not just about eating and drinking. It's a place to talk, to swap stories, and sometimes to test your luck at a game of dice. Folk music fills the air, and if the mood strikes, there's dancing. Good, honest fun to lift the spirit. Of course, the ale loosens tongues and tempers alike. As the night deepens, a heated word or a careless shove might lead to a nasty brawl. So, do you think you could survive as a serf in medieval England? Let us know in the comments and tell me, where shall we visit next?